Good evening. Good evening. It's great to see everybody joining in fellowship and talking, but we want to get started with our program because we want to get you out of here on time. Thank you so much for coming this evening. My name is Pat Young. I'm the Planning and Development Director for the City of Raleigh. And first of all, let me say a huge thank you to St. Matthew's Church for having us tonight. We really, really appreciate y'all. Yeah. This is part of the most important thing we do, which is get out in the community and listen to our community and get feedback from our community about where we want to go, how we want to grow. This is part of a series of events called Community Conversations for our comprehensive plan, Reflecting Raleigh. Reflecting Raleigh is a guide for growth over the next 25 years through the year 2050. So it's really important, right? It will help provide feedback to our elected officials as they make decisions about how we grow. So knowing what you value and what you think is important is crucially important to that. And tonight is one of the small ways we're trying to do that. To that point, you'll see QR codes, which are little digital codes on each of your tables that link to a survey. If you think we did something well or something we can do different or better, please take a minute to take the survey and let us know how you feel like we did tonight. Tonight's program is the second of two events centered around a critically important topic, which is how our neighborhoods grow and change. And we're calling that Rooted and Growing, which is what we want to do, right? We want to honor, respect, and continue to build on our roots, but make room for new neighbors. And so we're here tonight to hear from you about how you think we need to do that going forward. Last week we had a national expert named Alan Malik at Watts Chapel Baptist Church who talked to us a little bit about how neighborhoods change nationally, and tonight we're here to talk a little bit more about how we're doing it in Raleigh and how we have done it in Raleigh since 1792. So before I introduce our speaker tonight, Bynum Walter, I'll talk about a few housekeeping items and then talk about what we're going to do next after we hear from Bynum. So please help yourself to the incredible food from Onboard Catering. That's over here to the right. Yeah, let's hear it from them. It's my first time having them, but it will not be the last, I assure you. They're outstanding. The bathrooms are on my left as you go through the door. Men's on the left, women on the right. If you need any other accommodations for language or anything else, please talk to one of our staff who are at the table up front by the door. This event is being recorded. We want folks who weren't able to make it out tonight to be able to go back and take a look at the feedback. The table conversations that I'll talk about in a minute will not be recorded, but the Bynum's talk will be recorded. And on each table, we're going to try to answer as many questions as you have for us tonight as staff. But if we can't get to them all, there are colored sticky notes on each table. Please make sure to, if you have questions for our speaker, or if you have questions you just would like us to address, we'll try to address as many as we can. And if we don't have time, we will publish an entire list of those responses to make sure that every one of your comments or questions is addressed or answered. So please make sure to write those down, leave them on your table, or pass them to a team member who comes by. After Bynum speaks, we're going to do the most important part of the evening, which is have a conversation at each of your tables. My colleagues from Community Engagement will talk in detail about how that works, but really the goal of that is to have a conversation with your neighbors and friends, and we'll use that feedback to share with our elected officials. So it's my very great honor to introduce our speaker tonight, Bynum Walter. She's the Assistant Director for Planning and Development with the City of Raleigh and a Raleigh native. She has responsibility for the city's long-range and comprehensive planning programs, in addition to ongoing work to manage the city's rezoning process and comprehensive plan. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in American Studies and English and a Master's of Regional Planning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So it's my pleasure to introduce Bynum Walter. Thank you.
Which way are you going? I'm going to go right behind. Okay. Thank you, Pat. As Pat said, my name is Bynum Walter. I'm an Assistant Director in the Planning Department. I lead our long-range and preservation programs. I grew up in Raleigh. This place is really important to me. I've been working for the city since 2013, and in getting ready for this and talking to people about this, people keep asking, what does neighborhood change mean? Right? Yeah, and it means a lot of things. Actually, first, can everybody hear me okay? I've got a big echo up here. Yeah, I'm getting so-so in the back. Can you help me, Luke? Yeah. Super, thank you. Oh, it's because that speaker's right there. All right. So what does neighborhood change mean? It might mean that the people who live in your neighborhood look different. It might mean that the houses in your neighborhood change in style or color or material. It might mean there's a new school near your neighborhood or a new transit service, a new park. Anything that changes that dynamic in your neighborhood, that's change. And sometimes change is kind of scary, right? Like you kind of know how things work. You want it to stay like it is. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about how much Raleigh has changed, which has been a ton. 233 years, Pat mentioned 1792 is our original year. And we have very successfully, over a long period of time, Raleigh has changed to meet the needs of the community, and we know that that's going to keep happening, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. So Pat mentioned Alan Malik. He came last week and talked with us. Not everybody could be there. If you want to go back and listen or watch, I brought you a QR code. Is this live, Sarah? Do you know? Yep, code is live, so you can maybe don't watch while I'm talking. But I thought he was great. I learned a lot, and so I encourage you to go back and watch his talk. Too much stuff. So, everybody good with the QR that wanted it? Not yet? I'm waiting for the phones to go back down. All right, folks are ready. So I felt like I couldn't talk about Raleigh and Raleigh neighborhoods without showing you this image. This is a plan drawn by William Christmas of Raleigh. So in the 1700s, the state legislature concluded that we really needed a permanent capital in North Carolina. We'd been moving around Bath, Edenton, New Bern, Hillsborough, and we needed to get in the middle, get central, and make it easy for the legislature to meet regularly. So the state bought, land was made, Raleigh was bought from Joel Lane and organized as the state capital. This little, something interesting about this drawing, it's down. But it's kind of in the lower third. That square in the middle is Capitol Square. And then to the bottom left is the governor's mansion. Still there, that public square. Still there. And Nash and Moore squares, which are on the top side of this drawing, are still there. Burke Square has state office buildings on it now. Yeah. This is about a half square mile. It's about 3 miles around the whole perimeter of it. So pretty teeny tiny. And then 80 years later, this drawing as another one that I think of as very iconic for Raleigh, drawn by Camille Dry, who drew cities in this bird's eye style all over the southeast. This is about 80 years after the city is founded. You're looking northwest. Again, the capital is in the middle. By our scale today, this kind of feels like a neighborhood, right? At this point, Raleigh is about 13,000 people, which is about the same size as Smithfield today. And there's no zoning, just where you want to do your thing, you do your thing. And if there's chickens beside you or a school beside you, you work with it, right? This next drawing, picture, we switched to pictures. So this is 1924. This is about 50 years later, and Raleigh's grown to about 25,000 people, so it's just about doubled in 50 years. You can see the Capitol kind of at the back, and First Baptist Church to the left of that. The tall building in the foreground is the Sir Walter Hotel, still there, right? And something that's kind of cool or interesting, right beside the Sir Walter Hotel, there's a house, right? So Sir Walter's one of the tallest buildings in the city, and there's a little house right next door, right? So zoning has happened in America. That started about 1916. And at that point, it's more focused on, don't put your meatpacking plant next to my house, right? Like it's really focused on the most offensive, the smelliest, dustiest, dirtiest, most poisonous things, right? Containing those things. But now, how we think about zoning, we really like transitions, right? Some trees, some extra space, an extra fence. That all comes at a cost. It makes the cost of our development more expensive, and it makes everything take up more room, right? So, but at this point in Raleigh, everything's just all jumbled up together. It's a big mess, big happy mess. So that's 1924. And then this is the last one. So this is 1972. And in the foreground is Boylan Heights. Right behind that is the railroad and the gas works, which the gas works are gone now. But I bet a lot of you, if you're from here, remember when they were here. You can see the Capitol kind of in the upper third. And behind that is the legislature, the new legislative building, which at this point, this is 1972. This is about 123,000 people, 2.5 times what it was in the previous picture 50 years ago. And I've shown you all of this because Raleigh has changed steadily the whole time it's been here, right? And we're going to keep changing to meet the needs of the community. So we can expect a lot of change throughout Raleigh in the next 50 years, just like we've seen in the last 200. I want to talk a little bit more about history. You might ooh and ah for a different reason in this part of the presentation. This might not feel like this is a pretty painful part of our history to talk about. But I think it's a really important example of how the choices we make today will shape what people experience in Raleigh in 100 years. So when I think about the comprehensive plan, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our big vision? Thinking about the trade-offs, the choices that we make for any path that we pick, right? There's going to be consequences, negative things. We need to try to forecast, imagine that as best we can so that we can avoid pitfalls and also mitigate the things that we can, right? So lots of different things have happened to segregate neighborhoods in America. One of the probably best known, most well known, is the Homeowners Lending Corporation maps that were developed between 1935 and 1940. There are maps for a handful of cities in North Carolina, so Asheville, Charlotte, Durham, Greensboro, Winston-Salem. All those places are bigger than Raleigh in 1935. These are the places in North Carolina that have a population of 50,000 people or more. We didn't get there in time. Raleigh's neighborhoods were segregated just by a different means. And so I want to talk to you about, might not seem interesting at first, but I want to talk to you about a school bond that was passed in 1920. So this is a $2.5 million bond, and it builds, funds, and constructs 9 new schools in 10 years. Now, if any of you have ever thought that you could build a school for $2.5 million, much less 9, like just the math of this is kind of mind-boggling, right? So this map on the left shows the schools that exist in Raleigh before the bond, and the schools circled in the dark blue are for black students. There are 2 south of downtown, and there's 1 up in Oberlin Village. That school was built in 1873 and served the community at Oberlin Village. It's the largest community of freed black people in Wake County, settled by freed people. And then the 9 new schools, only 2 of them are for black students. They are also located south of downtown. So if you're a black parent, you're probably going to need to live close to a school that will help your kids, right? So it's feeling like you're going to want to live in the south of downtown. Then the other thing that happens, there's an annexation that same year. So what gets annexed is this stripy part along the top and to the left. So that's what we call University Park today, the Village District and the Cameron Village neighborhood, 5 Points and Hayes Barton. And everything that's annexed at this time has racially restrictive covenants applied to it. And there are lots, I'm going to show you a map of where all of those are in the city, but there are lots of them recorded. And they say that black people can't own property. They can't own those parcels. They can't rent them. They can't be a tenant there unless they're working for the white family that's owning or renting that land. And so it means black families can't live. I'm going to go back for a minute. That whole stripy area, there are no schools up there, and the covenants on the deeds for the parcels say black people can't live there. These are all these highlighted in purple are the racially restrictive covenants recorded in Raleigh that we know about. I want to give a big shout out to the Wake County Register of Deeds office. Is anybody here from Wake County? Thank you. Oh. All right. Shout out to you. Thank you for your work. Understanding this part of our history is just so important to understand why we're experiencing life the way we are. So all these areas in purple, so there's a light purple here and a dark purple. The dark purple is places where those racially restrictive covenants coincide with neighborhood conservation districts that have been applied. It's a zoning regulation that's been applied by the city. So those regulations don't prohibit black people from owning or living in a particular property, but they have other regulations that drive up the cost of living in those neighborhoods. So they have a minimum lot size, they have big setbacks, some of them have height restrictions, and that all those things make houses in those neighborhoods more expensive. And so the exclusion is happening based on economics now rather than race, but it's still happening. I wanted you to see this. So this is from 2020, from the 2020 census. And all the, there's a dot here for every person living in Wake County. The green dots are black people, people of color. And you will see, I don't know if you can read this map. So that's Capitol Boulevard, 401. You can see where it forks with 70 that goes out by Umstead Park. And just south of where they join is downtown. And so you see all those green dots in the southeastern part of the city where black families were forced to live so they could rent or buy property, and so that they could send their kids to school. So this is why I think the choices we make today really matter, because 100 years, that all happened in 1920, and we're still living with that. So choices that were made in the past, whether you know about it or not, it's shaping what you're experiencing, and that's true for the choices we make today. So how can we be thoughtful and work to understand deeply the impacts of what we're saying we're going to do today? That's why our work together tonight is so important. We've looked at some pictures. We talked a lot about history. I want to let's stop and think a little bit about our population, like how many people live here. I talked to you about, like at one point we were 13,000 people. We were like Smithfield. We're not like that anymore. We have always been growing. We have never lost population, which is really unusual for any city. And all that growth has resulted in economic growth. It's why people come here. It's why people who are born here stay here, because there is economic opportunity. We've doubled in the last 25 years. So since 2000, Raleigh has doubled, which in some of those earlier scenarios, it took us 50 years. The other thing that's happening is that our housing stock is relatively young for a city our age, because so much of our growth has happened more recently in our history, right? Like remember, we didn't hit 50,000 until sometime in the 40s. So, and by American standards, we are an old city, 1792. But our building stock didn't really leap up in square footage until the 1980s, which my Gen Z friends, I know that seems like a long time. Go to you. But in the life of a city, 50 years is the blink of an eye. Yeah, so 82% of our building stock in the last 50 years. And that pattern grows up with how the population and the area have grown. So the map on the left here shows building age across the city. The darker the color, the older the buildings. Again, most things built in the last 50 years. And then the map on the right shows how our city limits have expanded. And you can see the William Christmas Square in that darkest blue down in the kind of bottom middle. And then again, the lighter the color, the more recently that area has become part of the city. So Raleigh is about 150 square miles today. Are you asking me a question? Okay, great. Just checking. The 150 square miles today, remember that first square, half a square mile. So just like, so huge, right? Through about 2010, we see the city steadily, intentionally, proactively expanding our city boundaries. After about 2010, the state regulations change, and everything after that is mostly voluntary. And so the size, like the area of the city gets pretty steady, right? I'll talk a little bit about that more in relationship to what's gone on with the population density. So our urban area is growing, but our population hasn't grown at the same rate. So in Raleigh's early history, people lived close together. You walk to most things. Maybe you ride a horse to like the farthest thing in your life, right? Yeah, that's an interesting idea, isn't it? How many of you have ridden a horse in like the last 30 days? Yeah. Yeah. So the Great Depression and World War II really arrest growth, population growth, and construction, the rate of construction in our community. And then after the war, there's this big building and population boom, but there's also a very significant expansion of our corporate limits. So the area of Raleigh gets much, much bigger. So even though Raleigh's population is going way up, our population density is going down because we're adding so much land at that point. That trend of growing population and growing land area keeps going through about through the 2000s. And then two things happen in the early 2000s. One, we lose that ability to take in more land, right? And also there's this cultural thing that happens all over America. People talk about it as the great inversion. But households want to live in more walkable neighborhoods. They want to live in more what sometimes people call more traditional neighborhoods, close to downtown, close to jobs, close to services. And so we can't add land, and people are wanting to move back more into town. And so we start to see our population density go back up, right? That makes the change and the growth that's happening seem, because it's all like right here in town in the neighborhoods with us, right? It's not like somebody's farm on the edge that I never go over there. It makes that change seem much more immediate, much more disruptive. And it feels like a lot. It is a lot. But I would say it's just a continuation of what has been happening in Raleigh for about 230 years at this point. I've talked a little bit about how Raleigh is growing in like comparison to ourselves, like we double, we triple, whatever. We are also one of the fastest growing places compared to the rest of America. We're number 2 on the top 20 list. And I said before, we've doubled since 2000. I think you all know, because you live here, the more people that come here, the more demand there is for places to live, right? And then there's another thing happening. Property values are going up. So these two maps show, on the left is property values in 2013 compared to 2023. The darker the color, the more expensive or the higher the property value. And you see the maps getting a lot darker. Yeah, this is not news. I'm not really giving you news at this point, right? I'm just confirming what you have been experiencing living here, right? The other thing that has happened is that construction costs have gone up. The cost of everything continues to increase, right? Like bread is more expensive now than it was when I was a kid. But there's an inflection point in the 2000s when construction prices really start to tip up. Another thing that's happening is that really rich people are moving here. People who are making a lot of money are moving here. People who make more money generally than the sort of the average of who lives here now. So I think the next thing I'm going to say is not going to shock you. We have a real housing crisis. We have a housing supply and availability crisis. We got high demand. We got rich people moving here. We don't have the supply that we need. Development costs are high. Everything in like all 4 of these green boxes have just been up and up for the foreseeable past. We have to respond as a community, as a city. We have to respond, and the 3 most important things that we can do are to improve housing availability, affordability, and then also to increase our supply of affordable housing, units that are legally restricted, that the rents can only be but so much of market value. And then we have to address homelessness, because homelessness is a housing problem, right? Like having this high cost of housing is putting more people, making their housing tenuous or uncertain, or just moving them out. I know this is a lot. We are actually doing a really great job of responding to this on all fronts. And I want to talk a little bit about that. The first thing is abundant rate, market rate housing is one of the most important things we could do to ensure affordability and manage the increase in housing costs. So one of the things that happened in 2021, the city council passed some new regulations that allow more types of housing in more places. So they allow accessory dwelling units, apartments, duplexes, townhouses in more places in the city. generally increase the allowed density in most residential districts, reduce the requirement lot width we hadn't done in the city in a long time, and then there are a couple of new development options that come online here. So we've changed the rules to help make more housing, and it worked. So those changes have been very, very effective. Changes to our regulations have resulted in a big increase in delivery. Really some of the most effective changes in the country in terms of delivering new units to market. So about 30% of all units delivered in Raleigh so this is 2021 through January of this year, about 30% of those have been what we call missing middle units, those accessory dwelling units, townhouses, apartments, duplexes, triplexes, that kind of thing. So 254 new units built under those regulations, another 2,500 approved, ready to be built, and then just under 1,000 under review. So good impact. And that represents about a third of all the units since 2021 would not have been allowed otherwise without those changes in regulations. We're also seeing generally over the past couple of years an expanding housing supply. So if you look at what happened in 2021, 22 through 24, a huge number of units coming into the market, construction being completed. Again, this probably doesn't surprise you because you've ridden around town. You see all the stuff under construction happening. So for a city our size and growing as fast as we are, we're actually doing a really great job of delivering new units to market. This, to me, is very interesting. Our vacancy rate since 2021, vacancy of residential units is up, and rents are down, market rents are down. So you'll see a lot of times now apartment complexes now are offering like a month or two. I know, but you're seeing offers for free rent, and it's coming down a little bit. It is coming down a little bit. I hear you. I hear you. The city has also made a concerted commitment to preserve and deliver affordable, permanently affordable units to the market. So since since 2016 through June of last year, the city has delivered almost 3,900, or preserved or delivered 3,900 units. And then there are another 3,300, more than 3,300 in the pipeline. And so what does that look like? A lot of that is for rent housing. So in this bar chart across the bottom, that dark blue color is the new rental construction. But the dark green, I think this is important too, is rental units preserved. So like in fiscal year 17 and 18, that's a big chunk of the work that we're doing, right? So getting more permanently affordable units into the market, we're making progress there. And then I want to just touch briefly on our response to folks experiencing homelessness. So historically, this has been a county program. Cities leave support of people experiencing homelessness to the county. Raleigh has stepped in, is working to address this directly, working on financial assistance for housing, homelessness support services, as well as a coordinated community response with other agencies, the county, other private agencies, other public agencies. So our efforts are led by a steering committee of community leaders, partners, people with lived experience. So we have lots of expertise working on this, looking for a way to achieve what we call functional zero, which is a nationwide specific metric that communities use to mark that they've essentially eliminated homelessness for a particular population. We are not there yet, but that's the goal, right, is to get to that functional zero. We've been working on developing a camp decommissioning kit, strategy for that, and an operations guide to bring resources to folks who are living outside, information about how they can transition out of that situation. And then the last thing I want to talk about that we're doing that I think is really important in terms of responding to the growth pressure that we're all feeling because of change is the Public Project Community Support Fund. So this is bringing additional public dollars to areas where public investment is already happening. So think about the bus rapid transit corridors or around Dix Park, Dorothea Dix Park. So it's bringing support for businesses, for neighbors, to help with stabilization, capacity building, adding infrastructure investments where that would help ease the impact otherwise of private development. We have a couple of really important partners in this work I want to highlight that are being funded through the Public Project Community Support Fund to help us with this work. Some of the things that are happening: door-to-door canvassing to help identify qualified homeowners for homeowners assistance, working with Latino-owned businesses to provide information and resources, generally bolstering our efforts at outreach and training to help business owners, and bolstering our efforts to connect with homeowners who need information about home assessment, financial education, basically trying to help people stay in their homes, right? I'm not saying it's a great situation. I want to acknowledge that there is a real housing affordability crisis. The city is doing all these initiatives add up. We are moving the needle on this issue. Of course, there's still work to be done, but we are making good progress. We're here tonight because this is reflecting Raleigh. We're making a new plan for the city. I want to talk a little bit about the plan that we have now. So right now, we have this been in place since 2009. That plan says how we're going to accommodate all this growth and change for existing residents and new people too. And the growth framework map, which is this map on the right, it says that we're going to direct 60% of growth into downtown, city growth centers, and our bus rapid transit corridors, mixed-use centers. And then more recently, we modified that growth vision to say that half of the 60% should be in the bus rapid transit corridors. This vision really needs transit to be successful, and it directs growth to places that already have well-established infrastructure and services, places where existing infrastructure can meet the need of new population. And it's working. So this map shows you that growth patterns are generally following that vision. We're hitting generally 70% of growth in those designated growth framework areas. And the average in the transit corridors over the last maybe 10 years, since 2010, is about 14%, but in the last 2 years has been much closer to that 30%. So last year, 33%, and then the year before that, 20%. So generally, we are hitting that target. Now, 60% goes in the designated areas. That means the rest of it has to happen someplace. And you can see that showing up in yellow on this map. There are a couple of larger construction projects that have brought big influx of growth, residential growth, in those yellow or orange circles. And then you can also see smaller little yellow spots throughout the city where smaller projects are bringing that 40%, 30% elsewhere in the city. But this plan has been working. Again, why what we do today matters, right? How we set the course. I want to talk about, so this is two neighborhoods in Raleigh that are really far apart from each other. The New Bern Avenue corridor is on the eastern part of downtown. Briar Creek is up 70 at 540, right? We saw in earlier maps that property values have gone up, but household income has also gone up. So if you look at the New Bern corridor, again, the darker the color, the more money in the household. So 2013 on the left, you can see it gets much darker in 2023. Briar Creek was kind of more uniform. It's a little bit smaller census tract, but again, you're seeing increase in household income. And that goes along with these increases in property values that we've been talking about. So again, big increases between 2013 and 2023. Briar Creek, more expensive in 2013 than New Bern Avenue, but I would say pretty well matched in 2023. I want to, because we've been talking about like big city, neighborhoods, let's just like think about one piece of property. So this is 3 houses on Boyer Street and Pettigrew Street in the New Bern Avenue corridor. Little houses there. Each of them is less than 1,000 square feet, right? This is what a lot of Raleigh looked like 50 years ago. In 2011, 2 of the houses are gone. One of them, the one that's still there, is not habitable. So you know something's going to come back, right? But the way the market is, the way the value of the land is and what construction costs are, as a builder's not going to build a little house there like what was there before. So what are they going to do instead? So you get 3 really big houses, right? And they sell for a couple $100,000, $200,000, $400,000, right? So the neighborhood changes, but doesn't really help housing affordability, right? It's not really responding to change, what we need, right? So then this other example, this is on New Bern Avenue at Sewell Avenue. There are there's an big older single-family house on the far side here and a commercial building that's disabled veterans. And then there's a little vacant lot here as well. Those 2 larger buildings have really high price tags, right? Like $2 million a piece in terms of sales price. And this is what's there now. So there are 38 units here now where you had 2 buildings. These are expensive. Yeah, they are. They're like $500,000. And they have increased the housing supply in the city, right? So there's not really a big price difference between those 3 houses that kept supply just like it was and these 38 that they did some work to increase the number of units available to everybody, right? And maybe I don't want to live there. I can't afford to live there. But if the people who do, that means I'm not competing with them for the smaller or whatever it is, the other product that I want, right? It's like musical chairs. If there's never enough chairs, somebody doesn't get to sit down. So the more chairs we have in the game, the better. I want to wrap up by saying, without increasing density, the houses get bigger, the houses get more expensive, and it exaggerates and exacerbates that housing affordability crisis that we have in the city, right? So while I appreciate I bet a lot of you look at those townhouses and you're like, I don't want that. But we have to have that. We have to have more, whatever it looks like, to keep meeting the need of the community. I want to stop there and remind you a couple things. We got some more events related to the talk tonight and last week coming up. You can go to Ask a Planners, have a chance for one-on-one conversations with staff members, and then we're going to have another series of events on infrastructure, sustainability and infrastructure. We're calling it Sustain Us City in May. I hope I will see some of you there. And then I think I'm handing off to Dale. Where are you, Dale? To Sarah.
Thank you, Bynum.
Thank you, Sarah.
If you have questions, we probably have time for one question. If you have any questions, please write them down. A staff member, and hold them up, a staff member will collect them. We probably have time to read and answer one, and then staff will compile all of the questions and publish a report so you'll have answers to all of your questions. And so I'll give folks a minute to write their questions down, and we'll get ready to hear from Dale about the next portion of the event.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry. Well, you're in the room right now, right? We've been working through our engagement for this process to try and hold our events in places that are easily accessible by transit. We're providing food, we're providing childcare, we're providing translation services and assistive listening services, because we want as many kinds of people in the community as possible to participate. Historically, the community in Raleigh has been white and property owning, and we are trying to talk to more than that, more than those people, right? They show up reliably. So how can we connect with people who rent, who aren't white, who work and aren't retired? We see a lot of, I'm sure some of you are retired, and I value your input, but we need to hear from all kinds of people, right? Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. I hear that. I hear that. I hear that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sarah, what's happening now? Or am I answering any more questions?
I think we need to move on, so we have plenty of time for the
Great.
community conversation portion. So Dale, take it away. He's going to walk us through the next.
I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
Good evening, everyone. We're getting my slides ready, but my name is Dale. I'm from the Community Engagement Department. It's still stuck in my head, but Community Engagement Department. I'm a strategist with the department, and we're going to go over a community engagement activity tonight where we get to hear from all of you. They're still getting my computer ready back there, the slides. So.